Welcome to Vernon Howard's Higher World. Here are new solutions for your home life, love life, everywhere. Remember, you can be stronger than anything that now bothers you. Local classes will help you start life all over. Here is the way back home. Here is Vernon Howard.
Once upon a time, there was a pair of young lovers. These young lovers were named Mac and Mill. I'll give you time. Now, Mac and Mill went up the hill to get a pail of water. And when they got up there, they looked around and they didn't see any water. And it confused them. But all of a sudden, it occurred to Mac what had happened. He snapped his fingers and he looked at Mill and he said, "That's society for you again. Who ever heard of water on top of a hill? When last time you saw a well on top of a hill? Water flows down, doesn't it? So see, all these years, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, millions, have been deceived by the little poem, Water on Top of a Hill." So they said, well, there it goes again. The society is that way. So they trudged on down the hill with their bucket of water and looked around for a valley. I was walking on down, and guess what they saw instead of a valley? They saw a sign, and the sign said, "Lovers Lane." Well, they said, we're lovers. We might as well take advantage of it. So they set the bucket down and started strolling down Lovers Lane. Now, how many of you have ever been in love? Let's get that started. Kind of icky, right? Okay. So that's the way they were. Strolling down the lane, looking at each other with stars in their eyes, and there was no world but the two of them, right? So they strolled down Lover's Lane, and as they did, being inattentive to surrounding scenery and life, something began to happen to them of which they remained unconscious. Am I not describing the lives of human beings? Aren't things always happening to you of which you're unconscious? And that's why you get into the trouble in the first place, because you've got your particular kind of stars or dollar bills in your eyes, so that something happens to you and then it becomes too late. What happened to them was, eventually they found themselves in a swamp. But they weren't aware of it until it got up to their waist. Kind of slow, learning. So they're out there in the middle of the swamp, water all around them, weeds, as they always are in the swamp. And they didn't know what to do, because they didn't know which way was out. They were out too far. They'd been too attentive. It kind of crept up on them, only because they were not paying attention as to what they were doing at the time they were doing that, which is a basic lesson that you have to remember. Whatever you're doing, like changing your position in a chair or looking up at me, you must know that you're doing it. And you can be aware of yourself at the same time that you're aware of your surroundings. It's a double-pointed arrow where you can see both yourself and what's going on outside of you. Well, anyway, here they were, stuck in the swamp. Now, remember, they were madly in love. Ever been madly in love? You know how it is. They didn't know what to do. So you know what Mill suggested? She said, "Let's smooch." Right? Look, this is a parallel of life. This is a love story with a very bright lesson to it. And he said, okay, so they smooched, tried it. It didn't get them out of the swamp. He suggested, well, maybe we hold hands, we'll get out of the swamp. They held hands, didn't get out of the swamp. Another one suggested maybe we sing love songs. That'll help get us out of the swamp. Sang 2 or 3 love songs, not very enthusiastically. How can you sing love songs in the middle of a swamp? Didn't get them out. He finally said, well, maybe if we stop all of what we're doing now and start thinking a little bit, something might come to us which will get us out of the swamp. And she said, "Oh dear, do we have to make that great a sacrifice?" Finally it came to them. They gave something up, something very foolish, which you shouldn't be doing at the time. And let me stop right there, and you're going to have to work now yourself. Have you ever seen anyone else or yourself talking when you should have been driving your car? Have you ever seen someone maybe doing some hazardous work down at a factory? That's why they have safety rules down at a factory, because people get in trouble when they simply can't pay attention to what you're doing at the moment. Finally, an astonishing thought did occur to them, which was to no longer do what they had been doing, holding hands and singing love songs and distracting themselves, but to simply think of the way to get out of the swamp. And when we did that, all they had to do was walk in a straight line, and they were out. I have given you in lighter form an example of what everyone does, including yourself. You don't do the right thing when you have a problem, when you've wandered right down into the swamp of your life. You don't do the right thing, you do the wrong thing. The wrong thing is to think about it in terms of self-interest. The wrong thing is to go into what? Sentimentality. To go into moods, to go into feelings, to do everything but drop the wrong method so that there's nothing left in your mind but a very, very powerful desire to rescue yourself from your wrong position. Look how many times you've been in a scrape with someone, husband, wife, maybe with you now or not, and you always come back to the same swamp. There is a reason for it. Because you have refused, yes you have flatly refused to drop something that I'm going to describe to you in a little bit of detail. You have refused to drop your suppressed, hysterical behavior. Those lovers were hysterical. It wasn't love at all. It wasn't very romantic. It was a very, very dumb thing to do. That was their particular form of hysteria, to try to distract themselves from the pain of being in the swamp, hoping that somehow adding a little sugary atmosphere would somehow get them out of it. It doesn't work that way. Now I want you to know that all of you are victims of your own suppressed hysteria. And if you don't want to accept what I say as being true, then you prove it for yourself. That would be a very noble thing for you to do, to find out where and when and how often you break down. That's hysteria. See, I know very well, when you think of the word being hysterical, you think of perhaps of some woman who's screaming and fainting and flopping around and yelling at somebody. That's your idea of hysteria. Let me tell you something. You better listen to what I tell you too. Everyone, practically everyone on this earth is a hysterical man or woman. Just as bad as the picture I put in your mind a minute ago of that woman flopping around and screaming out of her mind, out of her life, no sense at all. You don't believe that because you don't want to believe it about yourself. Well, let's see how many examples we can find, and maybe you can look into the clues of what we're going to talk about and see that it does indeed refer to you, so that you'll stop singing love songs in the swamp. Don't smooch in the swamp. Now here's some examples. Nightmares, you know about those. Bad dreams. Oh yes. Oh yeah. All these fiery feelings that you have towards someone who is very close to you. Now we're getting close to home, aren't we? You see, look, let me tell you something. Never get embarrassed. Never feel ashamed when a thought like the one I gave to you is given to you. This is what's keeping you in your swamp, the fact that you go into hysteria by being embarrassed, ashamed, angry when something about you is pointed out to you. You know why, don't you? Because you have all these ideas of you being a nice person, a loyal person, a good person, and someone says that you have a lot of anger in you toward your spouse, toward your children, and you stay in the swamp by repressing it, pushing it down hard, not wanting to see it, which if you if you recognize the hysteria that I'm talking about, which you have inside of you, I guarantee you recognize it, the folly of it, that it's not getting you anywhere. Some of you people listening to me haven't moved 1 inch out of the swamp in 20 years. You're exactly where you are. Or if you moved at all inside of it. You just moved from the left side to the right side, or the north side to the south side. You're still very much in it. This is called, let's see if you can take this. All this refusal to see your suppressed hysterical behavior, blowing up. Someone leaves you and you blow up and you bawl. Crying is a crime. Now, what was your reaction to that? You see, you didn't want to hear that crying is a crime. And I know what you're going to say. I always know every false answer you're going to give me. I'm way ahead of you. Anytime you break down and cry, you are hysterical and you are apart from truth, reality, God. Don't you tell me that God himself has anything to do with your sobbing hysteria. I'll tell you where that's coming from. That's coming from the swamp itself. And that is why you feel it, because that's where you are. Only people who have managed to get a little bit of common sense, a little bit of goodness in them, and have worked their way out of the swamp by seeing where they were, can ever be called good people. And I need not remind you, but I will. When you're on solid ground again, it's not your goodness at all, because it is not your solid ground. Childish behavior and suppressed hysteria go very, very close together. You have to grow up into spiritual maturity. You have to do something other than what you have been doing. See, you can state these principles so simply, and yet they don't penetrate. For you to be different, you have to do something different. And what you really have to do is outgrow yourself. Try that another way. What you have to do is not solve your problems, but outgrow them. You are your problems. Look at Mac and Mill in the swamp. Here's a spiritual fact. What do you value more than you value your own soul? What are you valuing more than the spirit of truth? Another human being? You know better than that without me telling you. There is something inside of you that knows you have no business putting anyone, anything, including your own ambitions, including your own sickness and neurosis and suppressed hysteria. You have no business putting anything above your rescue.
Hi, this is Desi Arnaz Jr. Vernon Howard classes are essential for higher development.
Don't miss out. Come hear Vernon Howard in person. There's 4 classes every week, Wednesday and Friday evenings at 7 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Please support the program and find authentic relief today with Vernon Howard's healing booklet, 50 Ways to Get Help from God. Send only $1. Write to New Life, 700 Wyoming Street, Boulder City, Nevada, 89005, or call 293-4444. That's 293-4444.
Vernon Howard's Higher World is heard Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. here on Good News Radio, KVOV, 1280 on your dial.